We transition now to a segment we introduced last week. You may remember authors Judy Jonas and Marla Berkowitz sharing their research, something they've called pioneering work in connection to the unique dynamic between adult deaf and hearing siblings. As you'll learn from the conclusion to this two-part interview, blending deaf culture in the hearing world takes an entire family unit, as well as a commitment by all family members to learn how to sign. It wasn't until around 1965 when American Sign Language was recognized by linguists as an actual language. And you both thoroughly explore this in your book and provide a historical perspective of the International 1880 Conference of Milan, which almost destroyed sign language, eliminating it in deaf schools around the world because it was declared oral education was superior. And you've said that the consequences of this, of the 1880 Conference of Milan, are long-lasting and play a role in the relationship between deaf and hearing siblings today. Explain that for me. How so?
Well, 1880 sounds like a long time ago, but remember the siblings we interviewed ranged in age from 20 to 80. So some of those over 40s particularly, they were the ones that were hit the hardest with Milan because they grew up, like Marla, in homes that were told not to sign. When I trained at the Lexington School, kids' hands were smacked for signing with a ruler. So 1880 to the 1960s when I trained, to the 1970s and 80s when Marla went to school, mainstream, it was oral. Nobody was allowed to sign. And it wasn't until the 70s when the law was passed. And again, did they sign? They didn't sign American Sign Language. They came up with invented signs. But the point is that negativity about sign language is so ingrained in the families that we met, even the deaf families thought that sign language was a bad thing and were embarrassed to be seen on the street using it. The hearing sibs in that family had somehow internalized the same thing their parents taught them, that sign language is a bad thing. And imagine that even today, you will find people who don't think sign language is a good thing to have and are embarrassed by it. And that is the consequences of an edict from 1880. It's so scary that it's hard to imagine it's still out there, but it is still out there.
Yes, and to add, and the fact that there are more high school programs and colleges and universities that are offering ASL classes, that's wonderful. The attitude has changed, but, and we're noticing a lot of changes, but ASL since the 1880s has been hidden. It's been a secret. Only deaf of deaf families used it with each other. When you went to school, it was forbidden. 95% of deaf people are from hearing families, and they were forbidden to use sign language, and because of that ban of the 1880s. But at the same time, there's the parallel. Deaf of deaf used this sign and passed it from generation to generation. And through storytelling and oral folklore, some that impact today, ASL has now become recognized as a true language, and high school programs and colleges and universities are now offering ASL as a language. But today, deaf children are not learning ASL in school. To say maybe there's 2 or 3 or a very small number of programs in the entire United States that are using truly, it's a bilingual education program. Very few programs today. But there's over 150 years. So my point is that this ban from the 1880s is still being carried along, and it still shows up in education because ASL is no longer connected to deaf education. In the mainstream, they're still really forbidden from using ASL in the mainstream population. And if they're not learning ASL at home, and they're not learning ASL in schools. So the problem today is that our book emphasizes the importance of early families, not just deaf of deaf, but the parents, the siblings, all the families, aunts and uncles, cousins, relatives, the entire family need to learn ASL together to become a family project, to make it a fun activity to do it together. That would truly help the development of a long-term relationship between siblings and all family members.
One thing that was a focus in your book, and you did touch upon this, Judy, hearing siblings serving as interpreters versus hired interpreters for family functions or special friend and family gatherings. And it was interesting to read about this. And you said that these types of decisions, these conversations about interpreting are imperative, or family harmony will not occur. So my question is, what is the right way for everyone in the family to approach these types of conversations, and why are they key?
Well, I think the first thing is, and it definitely happened in my family, is to accept the fact that communication and communication access is everybody's responsibility. There are families that think, oh, the deaf kid, the deaf adult now, needs an interpreter. Well, no. Aunt Sally needs an interpreter if she wants to talk to Uncle Larry. Aunt Joan needs an interpreter. Everybody needs an interpreter if they want to talk and have a conversation with the deaf person, so that it becomes, whose responsibility is it? It's everybody's in the family. I mean, we still see families and heard families where the parents are in their 70s and 80s, and they're still, if they hire an interpreter, the parents are still paying for it. Yet the siblings are in their 40s and 50s, and they have grown children themselves. And why are they not all sharing the cost of interpreters? My family did set up such a fund where everybody, I have 10 nieces and nephews, and everybody's chipping in to pay for interpreters, and we have a family event, and therefore the burden is off me and the other siblings in the family who, can sign. But I think equally important to having everybody share the responsibility is, here are these siblings, they're grown-ups, and let's say the hearing siblings are not signing, and they're all not satisfied with their relationship.
Yeah.
It requires two to move on. You can't say, I'm moving on and you can stay behind. It requires an agreement that we are not comfortable or satisfied with where we are today in our ability to communicate with one another, or in our ability to have the kind of relationship I would like to have with you. I mean, we have another 30 years together. Let's do something about it. If the other one says, I'm not interested, I'm just real happy with what we have, or I'm satisfied with what we have and it's not worth my time and it's not a high priority in my life, then you're not going to move on. Yeah. So I think in any sibling family, whether you're deaf and hearing or just regular old siblings who have their baggage, because we all have sibling baggage, if you're not satisfied, it takes two to tango.
And just to close, from one thing I learned about was this feeling of isolation, in particular for deaf siblings who felt like they could not connect with their family members, their brothers and sisters. Yet many of the siblings interviewed, or quite a few, have worked or are actively working to change this and to bring about inclusion. What are practical solutions for siblings to help mitigate isolation and to create sibling bonds?
Isolation is truly something that people don't realize. If you are sitting in a group of people, for example, if it's at a dinner table and people are different, they're sharing their day and they're talking about what they did during the day. And even if one person is trying to summarize what all the other people are saying, the isolation is still there for the deaf individual. Why? Because the communication is not equal. It's just not practical. Everyone jumps in and needs to share the responsibility. And you need to keep everyone in the loop. It shouldn't be one person taking on the full responsibility for the entire group. The entire group has to be involved and sharing equally with the responsibility. The solution might be for signing. Everyone needs to sign. But if that can't happen, then everyone needs to recognize that we have to find creative ways to keep everyone included in the conversation. So that's, for example, it's a practical application of what we're talking about.
Can you give examples of some of those creative?
Yes. For example, you might bring in an interpreter. That would greatly reduce the isolation. But that tends to happen in large, formal family events, or like a party, or some type of a formal get-together. I'm talking about everyday interactions. So it needs to become a fun activity during for example, playing a game with communication. Or the deaf sibling may not know sign, and then they have to learn a new word every day and learn a new sign every day. So there's little ways every single day that people will then become comfortable directly communicating with each other. That's one example. Judy, do you have another one?
What came to mind is something that I take for granted because I have a deaf brother, but the world does not. Taking turns. I mean, it's just so simple. Some families I know, in order to learn how to take turns, because you don't have to be deaf to not know how to take turns, and you don't have to be hearing to not know how to take turns, hold a ball. And so you can't imagine how hard it is if you and I are having a conversation and you answer me, and my deaf brother doesn't even know that you answered me. Right. He doesn't know it's your turn, because he might be lip reading me and trying to lip read me and see me speaking, but he doesn't know that you interjected something. So some families have set up a rule: hold the ball when you're speaking. When the next person wants to speak, you hand them the ball. And you're not allowed to talk unless you have the ball. Well, that way you stand a chance of catching from this garble on the lips what Aunt Joan is saying. But many, many families jump in, interject one another. Once there's more than two people in this conversation, the deaf person is lost. So one of the really simplest baby step one, take turns. And make it visible, take turns. I mean, learning sign is a biggie, and you all have to agree to do that. But taking turns can make a difference, and it's so simple. Right. But it's not simple in lots of families. I don't know about yours, but it wouldn't be simple in mine.
Marla Berkowitz, Judy Jonas, authors of the book Deaf and Hearing Siblings in Conversation. Thank you so much for your time. And to Linda Seipel, thank you for your time as well.